like your action movies bloody and brutal, then you may want to check out Avengement. This one is directed and co-written by Jesse V. Johnson, who I think primarily is known as a stunt person, but has dipped his toe in many a role behind the camera. And this one stars Scott Adkins, who is a very prolific kind of B-movie sort of action star, though he has had a few kind of roles in kind of more major films. But there's a lot of these kind of straight-to-video action flicks. But I've got to say, this one, when you look at it, is kind of easily kind of lumped in with the kind of the standard sort of action films that you'll get on VOD straight away, and kind of almost like when you first see the cover and stuff, you can kind of dismiss it. But I have to say, I feel this movie will get a bum rap because of that, because it's actually a very well made film. The nearest film I would compare this to is A Brawl in Cell Block 99 that starred Vince Vaughn. It's a very similar feel to that in a certain degree, where that was a kind of you know, prison drama with some very kind of brutal violence. This does have elements of that, and it reminded me more of that compared to most of Scott Adkins' kind of filmography, which is kind of lots of kind of fun action films, but they're kind of a little bit more kind of lightweight and silly. This one, I feel, has real violence and real gravitas in it. Now, what is the story? So Scott Adkins plays this guy who gets kind of mixed up in crime in his kind of younger life. He's pretty much a straight shooter, but his brother is deep into organised crime. Brother played by British TV star Craig Fairbrass, and he ends up going to prison. And as a result of his actions, you know, I won't go into it, but someone innocent dies because of his by accident. So he goes to the kind of like the hardest kind of prison, and while he's in there, his life is hell. Now, this isn't a prison movie, although we do get quite a lot of flashbacks, and he is constantly kind of getting harassed by other inmates who seemingly want to kill him, and as such, it turns him into, quite frankly, a psychotic killer who is scarred, bled, beaten, burnt, and he ultimately escapes and kind of wants revenge. And he kind of the bulk of the story focuses him in this kind of this bar where he's confronting the people who thinks have wronged him. I don't want to give any spoilers here, but that's the kind of your basic kind of premise. So what works with Avengement? So like I said, I think when you look at this, you just kind of like pass it off as a, you know, another kind of OTT straight to video action flick. And yeah, okay, it is that to a certain degree, but I feel this movie is very well made. It is, and here's the thing. I mean, Scott Adkins is an accomplished martial artist, and he's that. You know, look, most of his films are like that. But here, I mean, there is a degree of that with this film, but he's much more of a brawler in this movie. But the violence, and I think this is the benefit of having maybe someone who's worked a long time in the stunt industry. The director here, and Scott Adkins and his team and everything, the violence here is so brutally real. You feel every punch, every broken bone, you know, every stab, everything. It's all filmed in a way that doesn't glorify violence, but it shows you the horrors that one person can inflict on another, and kind of the devastation ultimately that is caused by essentially a kind of the spiralling life of crime and the life of violence, and kind of where it will lead. So although on the surface of this film you can kind of watch it as a simple action film, it's a story of a man whose kind of his circumstances have led him down a very kind of a dark path, and he ultimately is a victim of circumstance to a certain degree, and it's changed him. It's changed his the way he is, his outlook on life. But it's also got a lot of heart, this film. Now, there are scenes that Scott Adkins has with his mother, and also that his brother, and I thought were genuinely touching, and they genuinely felt like, you know, a mother and son relationship or a sibling relationship. There's a really great scene, and towards the end of the film, where we have Scott Adkins and Craig Fairbrass, who play brothers, And, you know, I'm not going to go tell you the exact reasons they're having this conversation, but you get the feeling that there is a lot of animosity, but there is still that kind of family kind of bond there. And you don't quite know where it's going to go, and there's the possibility of it going in a number of different directions. And that's down to some good acting. And I know these guys aren't particularly well known for, you know, massively great acting, but I thought they did an absolutely fantastic job here. So I actually thought the acting was very good. I totally believed all the characters here. I mean, there's a lot of kind of like Cockney gangster types, which, let's be honest, it's in these guys' wheelhouse, but they did a great job at it. The violence and the kind of the fighting here, I don't want to say martial arts because there's a lot. It's a lot more realistic, and you know, you're not having these kind of like high flying stunts. It's very much functional fighting. I mean, Scott Adkins is a great martial artist. So there is some flair in his kind of, obviously, some of the sort of fight scenes here, but for the most part, it's filmed in a way that would be more functional and kind of like, you're not going to be setting up very kind of elaborate moves. You want to, you know, you want to take down someone quick and violently, and that's kind of the way it's portrayed. And this is why I make the comparison to a Brawl in Cell Block 99, because that was very kind of a brutal and gritty look at that kind of lifestyle, and this, it really kind of complements, they complement each other, this film. So that was all, I mean, it's just very well shot, and kind of the choreography here is absolutely fantastic, and kind of, it really, you really feel like you're watching these very kind of violent and bloody action scenes, but you're not thinking, oh, that's cool. Well, you are, but it's kind of like you're thinking, Jesus, that looks really bad, and that these guys are going to get permanently damaged through the stuff that's kind of going on there. And Scott Adkins, you know, he is ugly down for this one. He's got these, there's a horrible kind of uncomfortable scene where he gets curb stomped, and he's wearing these kind of like metal teeth through the rest of the movie and stuff, and he's got scars and all that. So it's really not glorifying the violence, but it does showing it's spectacularly violent and gritty. The storyline is, you know, it is a little bit more complex than you would initially think. It's kind of a crime and mystery to a certain degree, and kind of finding out what's going on. And it seems like it's relatively kind of straightforward at the beginning. And I mean, it's not overly complicated, but there's enough here, I feel, in the narrative to keep you interested in the characters, and you know, having a kind of an interesting sort of, you know, revenge tale with elements of kind of mystery and, you know, who's behind certain things, etc. So I thought that was all pretty good. Do I have any complaints with this film? Only a few minor ones. I feel the music is somewhat misplaced in this film. There's a couple of musical choices that I wouldn't have put in here, and there's a certain musical score that is repeated throughout the film, and it comes a little bit overused, I must say. In regards to any other criticisms, I would say that I have two, but they're relatively minor. The story does suffer from a couple of conveniences. I'll just give you one for example. The moment where you see Scott Adkins' character get arrested, it just seems like, you know, where are the police? Well, the police literally just standing there, ready to arrest him, but they seem to appear out of nowhere. So there's a couple of like conveniences in regards to kind of like plot that kind of are just there to kind of make the story go in a certain direction. And the only other critique I will have with it was that the writers here, Jesse V. Johnson and Stuart Small, I felt couldn't resist but try and give Scott Adkins' character some altruistic personality traits, despite the fact that he's this clearly a, you know, very kind of damaged individual. They kind of want him to be your good guy, your hero, and they kind of give him this kind of this particular plot line that is very altruistic. And it's relatively late in the game that this is kind of introduced, and I didn't feel it needed it. And I felt like it was like, oh, I'm a bit worried that, you know, he's just going to be seen as a kind of like a psychopath, and we kind of need to give him this kind of extra thing that will make his character seem like he's a good guy. And I didn't feel it was necessary, and I felt like it was just a decision that was made to kind of like, let's just make sure that people are rooting for Scott Adkins' character, because he is very kind of violent, he is very dangerous, but we want to make sure the audience kind of knows that he's the good guy. But I actually would have preferred if they actually hadn't had that, and it would have been just a kind of, you still would have rooted for him, I feel, because you still feel he was wronged, and he was still, in his own mind, kind of doing the right thing. But I just felt like it was almost like I'll call it a Hollywood decision, despite the fact that it's kind of an independent film. Just to kind of like, oh, we need to kind of reinforce the fact that he's actually a good guy. But they're relatively minor points in it. They might not even bother some people. So this is the next thing I'll say. This is not a criticism, but this is more of I feel like a statement I have to say. If you struggle to watch violence on film, and if you're watching this channel, that's probably not the case, but I feel I must say, then this film may push the boundaries a little bit beyond what you want to watch. That's the only thing. And it's not a critique. It's more of just a taste thing, I feel. Because this movie, despite all Scott Adkins films being violent, because he's a martial arts action star, this film is one step beyond that. So yeah, the violence is very real here and very kind of like disturbing. So I recently someone asked me a question: what's one of the most gory and grisly films you said that isn't horror? This would be a contender. But overall, I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a thoroughly well-made film with great performances, fantastic choreography, believable and bloody violence, and just well-directed. So overall, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.